Hello. Happy Monday to everyone. The Analytic Gardener here. I am just coming to you with a very short video at a request, honestly, of the New Orleans gardener, Miss Linda. On her live last night, she talked a little bit about the Longshoreman strike that is impending and asked if, said that there wasn't anyone really in our community that was talking about it. So I figured I'd put together something very quickly and share it out today. All I really had planned on doing was putting a post on my community page. But all of that said, the reason for the video. So I'm not going to take a whole lot of time to go through a lot of this, but you guys don't know a whole lot about my background because I've not really shared a lot of it. But just so that you're aware, business administration was the area of study for me. I'm kind of a nerd, a little bit of a geek in that area, and wanting to like case studies and things like that. But also, you may have seen in one or so of our videos of that. There was a tractor trailer, a tractor, which is a semi truck, that was in one of our videos. That truck was not a fleet truck, meaning it belonged to a large company. That was actually our truck. So all of that said, that's why I wanted to kind of come in here. So now, a couple of things. I'm really just going to try to hit the, who, what, when, where, why, and how of this. I don't have tons of information, but I do want to share what I know and what I've been able to gather. So, a couple of things. Right now, my husband and I, we do have a trucking company. We're not currently running any loads, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a little second. But we were running what we call dry vans and containers. So a dry van is the trailer that you see that's on the majority of our trucks that are our semi trucks that are riding down the road. It's the one that carries all of our household goods. And then the containers are the ones that are on the trains. Sometimes you'll see them on the back of semi trucks. There are different kinds, different shapes, different sizes, like high cubes and larger ones. But that said, those are the ones that are usually coming off of ships, barges, and then they get put on tractors usually, and then that have a chassis, and then they take those and they put them on, take them to the rail yard, and then they go on rail yards. Or maybe they go to a facility, depends on who you're running for, right? Okay, so all of that said. Now, talking about this longshoreman thing and why I wanted to mention all that. I'll circle back to that in a second. But even though we're not running right now, we do keep our ears pretty close to the ground about what's happening in the industry and related industries, because of course what's happening on the ports is very, very related to what happens in the trucking industry, because the trucks go to the port, right? So what I've gathered, and I'm going to share a couple of things with you, but what I've gathered is that it is the East and the Gulf ports that handle about approximately 50% of the goods that are shipped in containers that go in and out of the United States. As of yesterday, President Biden had not stepped in. As of yesterday, he was saying that he was just going to allow the collective bargaining process to continue and that he wasn't going to step in. That has some implications that a lot of people are concerned about, but that's what he has said. So another thing to really know about these what's happening with the longshoremen is that this is not new. This has actually been something that's been happening for several months now, and their negotiations have stalled. But the impact to the U.S. economy is at the tune of billions per day. I've seen different estimates, one talking about 1 to 1 billion a day, some saying 4 or 5 billion a day. So in any case, the impact is great, right? Now, what has also happened, there are two entities at play, basically. It's what's called USMX, that's the U.S. Maritime Alliance, and then ILA, which is the International Longshoremen's Association. So basically, USMX is like your port, and then ILA is the union that represents the longshoremen. And what is happening is they're just not, they've come to an impasse and they haven't been able to move any further. There are things that the Longshoremen's Association is asking for, one of which is an increase in the wages. Another is that they are not wanting automation to be available, and in some cases saying that that automation is against the contract that is already in place. So all of that says just to say that there's a lot going on in the background that they're looking for. This would be, if this happens, this would be the first mass work stoppage at an Eastern port in nearly a half a century. And that it would be the first walkout that has happened on the East Docks since 1977. So, all in all, there are several ports that are involved. There are about 14 of them. And then but one thing to be noted, though, they did say that this will not, if this walkout occurs, the strike happens, it will not impact anything for the military. So if there's military cargo, anything that's happening related to the military, it will not be stopped. And then also anything related to the cruise ships, that will not be stopped. So I'm going to now take you and show you a couple of articles where I've gotten this information so you can go and see it for yourself, and then I'll try to put it in the description. May not be immediately, but a little bit later, but I'll put it in the description so that you can go and do your own research. So, and then there's some other things that I want you to remember about this. So I'll be back in a sec. Okay, guys, so what is happening is there's a lot of information that, of course, is out here. I've been searching and looking at different sites, getting different information on what's been happening, and I wanted to share some of it with you so you'll see kind of where I've been looking. So when I said there were 14 ports, so 14 ports that are involving, and this is on cbsnews.com. So 14 ports involving some 25,000 workers could be affected by the strike, according to USMX. It's Baltimore, Boston, Charleston, South Carolina, Baltimore, Boston, Charleston, South Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, Miami, Houston, Mobile, New Orleans, New York, New Jersey, Norfolk, Virginia, Philadelphia, Savannah, Tampa, Florida, and Wilmington, Delaware. So that's what we're talking. And then the work stoppages, though, there could be work stoppages that touch a range of businesses, right? Because again, it's transport, it's warehousing, all of that. So it could impact more than 100,000 people that could be temporarily out of work because of this as well. And where I was talking about the wages, so they said in the East Coast and Gulf Coast, they earn a base of $39 an hour, and after 6 years on the job, and then on the West Coast, they make $54.85 an hour, a rate that would increase to $60.85 in 2027, including overtime and benefits. So other things go into that for sure, but this was talking a little bit more in terms of what happened. So when I mentioned that senior officials have been in touch, they basically said that they are, the USMX is urging them to come to a fair agreement fairly quickly, a fair agreement fairly and quickly, one that reflects the success of the companies, and that the shutdown could hamper the flow of goods and raise shipping costs, so on and so forth. So backing up a little bit, and forgive me for the scrolling because of course it's not in order, but the USMX did file an unfair labor practice with the National Labor and Relations Board, and they're asking for an immediate injunctive relief requiring the union to resume bargaining so that they can negotiate a deal. But again, like I said, there are differences on both sides. There are some, names and all of that stuff that we won't get into. But ensure they did say that there were things that have been happening in the background where the transportation secretary and the labor secretary has gotten involved. But again, as of yesterday, the president said he's not going to stop anything. So then I should have backed up and tell you what does a longshore worker do, because that was one of the questions that came up last night. So a longshore worker uses heavy equipment to load and unload cargo ships. They work with cranes, lifts, clamps, maneuver loads of different weights and sizes. the containers that they call a stackable metal bins called C cans. So those are the containers, and then those professionals process the containers by their tracking of the movements in an inventory control system. They move the goods, they process the paperwork, and then they start with a different order. And this is from Indeed.com. So just so you know, they're the ones that have really taken all of that stuff, all of those containers that are on those ships, on those barges, on all of that stuff that's on the port, and they're making it go where it needs to go, right? So that's who we're talking about when we talk about the longshoremen. Now, I saw another article that I thought was interesting. It was on Progressive Farmer, and the only reason I really wanted to bring that up, though, is because they talked about a little bit about what has been happening, of course, but they also mentioned a few things in terms of contracts. They did talk about the USMX and predecessor organizations that had negotiated 10 contracts with the International Longshoremen's Association before the AFCIO without coastwide disruptions. But they mentioned also that in 2018, the USMX and the ILS signed a new 6-year contract where 14,500 port workers on the East and Gulf Coast were impacted, and that it started there and then it's ending today. And that's the reason for all of this, is because it is ending today. The problem is they just have not gotten, they haven't come to any type of agreement. Now, I did see somewhere, and I don't recall exactly where I saw it, but it does talk about where the Biden administration did feel like the U.S. economy could, or our infrastructure could handle a disruption for about a week. So you have to consider that too. That's kind of what we need to know, that this could go on, for about a week, and we're thinking that maybe we can handle this. But I think one thing that we really need to consider is the fact that we just had a major hurricane also on the southeast, and there are places that are already experiencing some level of disruption, right? So we have places that are already seeing shortages in the grocery stores in food, because there are places that are without light, right? They don't have any power right now. So some food sources already are having some challenges, with water, with bread, with eggs, the normal things people try to go grab. They're already having some disruption. The other part of this is that we also, because of this major hurricane, we do have some major interstates that have been impacted. I-40 is one of them. So I-40, unfortunately, part of I-40 is in the river, right? It has been washed away because the storm was so bad in parts of southeastern United States, here in North Carolina, maybe even I think that maybe like Tennessee. But in any case, parts of 40 are in the river. So no one's going to be traveling on 40. There aren't going to be any trucks traveling on 40 to bring any of these goods, in any case, for the goods that are already off of the ports, that have already made it through, and are sitting somewhere else. So all of that said, though, other piece that I wanted to also bring up is that this isn't just here, right? So on the Wall Street Journal, they were talking about this being from Maine to Texas and slammed the U.S. economy, and that, talking about that 77% pay increase. But trade groups are already talking about this, and hundreds of retailers, manufacturers, all of them are talking about how it could hobble businesses and impact the holiday business shopping season. So there are associations that are already talking about it, and they're already concerned. One, Lead Farm 73 actually mentioned it about the fact of where he is, where there is no, there are no supplies in terms of like gas, and no supplies in terms of food, because they are under a power outage right now. But he was talking about the fact that there were already things in the stores in terms of like your decorations for upcoming holidays, but there was no food, right? So these are things that we have to consider as we're talking about this. Now, if this stuff sits in these containers, the containers are coming off the water. So the containers are going and they're sitting on these ports. If they have to sit there, many of them have perishable goods in them, right? One I saw, and I don't know if it's in this one, but they were talking about mangoes, and how someone was saying they wanted to ship the mangoes in, fly the mangoes in, but that's expensive, right? How do you justify the cost of bringing the mangoes in from somewhere else by flying them in? This is also, here's one where I was talking about the $3.8 billion to $4.5 billion a day. So that's like $4 to $5 billion a day in impact. Okay, so I want to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to get off of this. But this is talking about Canada. So we're right here, and Canada, as of today, Canada has had walkouts. So more than 85,000 longshoremen in the U.S. Post are poised to strike here on Tuesday. But in the midst of that, Canada is already dealing with its own. So what they were talking about here, about 320 longshoremen represented by a local affiliated Canadian Union of Public Employees begin a 72-hour strike on Monday morning, freezing work for two terminals in the port of Montreal. And those terminals are operated by Termont, which represented 40% of the containers that moved through that port. Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up at all is the fact that that is right here, bordering the United States, and Canada's already feeling it. So if we have stuff not coming from Canada, you can't get it on the East Coast. If they try to take some of that the brunt of not being able to work on the East Coast and use the ports on the West Coast, well, that's going to take longer for them to get there. They may not have chassis in order to take that stuff off. They may not have the people that are available. So that's one thing to be considered. So, okay, so bringing this full circle, I told you I was going to circle back to truckers, and the reason I brought truckers up in the first place. So all of what I just talked about, the fact that we have the longshoremen that are wanting to go on strike, and that the strike seems to be really impending, beginning on tomorrow. If the longshoremen go on strike and we no longer have things that are coming off of the ports, that is one thing. But what is also occurring right now is that there is conversation also going on in the trucking industry about possibly striking along with the longshoremen, because part of the reason that the longshoremen are striking, the trucking industry agrees with them, because some of it is wages and some of it is automation, and they're both being impacted by the same thing. So wages, of course, for wages for the longshoremen, we talked about that a little bit. Wages for the truckers, it is not regulated, right? The rates have been going down for many years now, and there are some truckers that have gone out of business, trucking companies that have gone out of business. Some of the larger fleet companies have been kind of absorbing them, or they're just kind of running them out of business because they're accepting rates that are lower than what an individual trucking company can afford to run loads for. So that has caused a lot of problems in terms of individual truckers, where and the individual truckers make up the majority of the trucking industry. Like, they're the backbone, really. May not necessarily make up, but they're the backbone of the industry. So the fact that they are going out of business and are thinking about striking with the longshoremen, that's a serious thing, because even if things had come off of the ports, now we're talking about the fact that whatever is available, the truckers aren't going to carry it anywhere because the rates have been so bad. Okay, that's one thing. Automation is the other thing. So the automation piece, what the longshoremen are talking about is that the cranes, there's some automation in the cranes, and having cranes actually pick the containers up and move the containers and all of that. So they have an issue with that. For the trucking industry, automation has been a thing for several years now. Self-driving semi-trucks has been one of those things. And I did not say that incorrectly, guys. Self-driving semi-trucks. Driving down the road, no person in it, self-driving. That's a part of why the truckers there's conversation about, standing with the longshoremen and actually striking at the same time. So, saying all of that to say, there are several things, and kind of wrapping all of this up. But who are we talking about? We're talking about the fact that the USMX and the ILA are at an impasse. They don't seem like they're going to get to any type of negotiation before tomorrow. If that does not happen, there will be a strike what can that strike impact? So it's going to impact many things. What we can uh, uh, kind of think of or ascertain at this moment is that it most likely will impact the truckers because they're the ones that would be going to the ports to pick up the loads. It's going to impact other workers that are tied to the industry. It's going to impact the individual consumer because if you if there's nothing coming off of the ports and there are no truckers available to take anything off of the ports, or the truckers can't take anything off of the ports because of the strike, then somewhere down the line, may not be immediate, but somewhere down the line, that trickle down effect is going to be felt by the consumer, which means that either the consumer's not going to get it, it won't be available in the store, or if it is available in the store, the things that are available in the store, then the price of it goes up because now we're talking supply and demand. So price is going to go up. When? Tomorrow, October 1st. That is the date because the agreement that is in place for the ILA and the USMX, it ends tonight. 9:30, it's over. Why is all of this happening? Again, kind of talked about that, and how is really what I just said. How that's going to happen is we're going to feel it in our individual goods, and the fact that we have so many things impacting us right now with with storms here on the southeast, and who knows whatever else is going on in other areas, because we know that other areas are being impacted by things as well. I know I'm here in the southeast, so I can't speak to all of the other areas and as to what's happening in real time right now, but whatever natural disasters or situations are happening in other areas, we have to consider that as well. So the fact that we have a natural disaster on the East Coast right now, having the ports not open, and that there is a potential new natural disaster that is currently in the Gulf Coast that could be impacting us. There are major interstates that are already impacted. There are some places that still have trees down, and all of that. So we have to just consider it all. So um, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I hope that this has been good information for you. And yeah, I put this together really quickly. I apologize for being all over the place, but I just wanted to put it in your hands because it's already late already as I'm finishing this. So I hope that you're safe. I hope that all is well with you, and we'll see you later. Bye.